Poor Jimmy. True, it was a terrible night for women, children, and for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who cut his lawn.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go. For healthcare.
You know what? If I ever cry on TV, it'll be because Maroon 5 put out a new song. But that's it. You big.
For years, Jimmy Kimmel held court as a late-night king, his smile plastered across billboards, his jokes echoing through the cultural landscape. But beneath that polished veneer, a seismic shift was occurring, transforming the once lovable prankster into a figure of intense public scrutiny. Now, his carefully constructed persona has been brutally dismantled, not by some anonymous online mob, but by two titans of primetime commentary, Megyn Kelly and Greg Gutfeld. What happened when late-night smugness met primetime shade? A verbal demolition that left Jimmy clutching his punchlines like a security blanket, proving that even untouchable figures can crumble. This isn't just hot, it's nuclear, and the meltdown is gloriously public and painfully funny.
Back in the day when I was on the prime time of Fox and you were on the prime time of CNN, a couple of hours after our shows ended, late night comics would come on, and they occasionally would make us laugh, Piers. I mean, occasionally they understood that they were in the game of making everyone laugh. As you know, they've abandoned that game now, and they're just political operatives out there. Colbert, Kimmel, Seth Meyer, who I struggle to even mention that guy's name. He's such an absolute I can't stand him. But anyway, it's just my thought bubble out loud.
All right. So a Republican has won an election, and you know what that means. Jimmy Carter has to stay alive for 4 more years. It's also time for liberals to tell themselves that they're still right about everything and their hysteria and delusions of persecution are perfectly normal. Yet right now, they're melting like that stick of butter Joy Behar keeps between her thighs to prevent chafing. Case in point, last night, all the other late-night hosts threw a hissy fit. It's too bad Tim Walz is still grieving, or he could send them all a sack of industrial-strength tampons.
Back in a different era, late-night comics understood their mission, to make everyone laugh. They were masters of observation, capable of finding humor in universal truths. But somewhere along the line, something fundamentally changed within the world of late night. Jimmy Kimmel, once known for his sharp wit and playful irreverence, has undergone a radical transformation. He's no longer the guy who'd host bikini contests or beer pong tournaments. Instead, he's become the television equivalent of a middle school principal delivering a solemn TED Talk on morality, except somehow less charismatic and far more self-righteous. If smugness could be bottled and sold, Jimmy would be a billionaire with his face on the label, perpetually glaring at anyone who dared to vote outside his narrow ideological lane. His current act feels less like comedy and more like a desperate rebranding, the kind you see from a washed-up boy band member trying to go solo with an acoustic guitar and a vegan cookbook. The stark reality of this shift became painfully evident after a recent election. While many braced for the expected political discourse, Kimmel plunged into a theatrical display of emotional distress, declaring it a terrible night for virtually every demographic imaginable, from women and children to hardworking immigrants, healthcare, the climate, and even abstract concepts like truth and democracy. His monologue wasn't a comedic dissection of events. It was a mournful lament, a tearful sermon designed to elicit sympathy and agreement, not genuine laughter. This new iteration of Kimmel emerges nightly from what feels like a comedy graveyard, delivering monologues that land with the impact of a wet paper towel written with all the edge of a spoon. He's abandoned jokes for moral gymnastics, scanning the crowd not for genuine amusement, but for compliant applause. His show has devolved into a televised Tumblr post where satire is replaced by sanitized outrage, complete with a pre-recorded laugh track. It's less a funny man and more a Facebook activist with a studio budget performing a sad, predictable ritual night after night.
We took a look at some of their reactions to the news of Trump's win. Look at this.
Hey there. How are you doing? If you watch the show regularly, I'm guessing you're not doing great. Yeah, me neither.
Let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go. for healthcare, for our climate. It was a terrible night for poor people, for our allies in Ukraine.
Late night host Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air after taking the summer off. He's missed a lot. Kimmel says if you're not vaccinated, you shouldn't get a hospital ICU bed. But I'm not sure if Jimmy was being sincere because he wasn't crying. Anyway, it's just funny hearing someone say, I see you, who nobody actually sees. Oh. Look, I don't want to suggest that Kimmel's show has become boring and predictable, but last night during the taping, people in the studio audience were changing the channel.
But the shift goes beyond his stage presence. When Kimmel took the summer off, he returned with a controversial statement suggesting that unvaccinated individuals shouldn't occupy hospital ICU beds. The irony wasn't lost on critics. Here was someone proclaiming I see you from a show that fewer and fewer people were actually seeing. Greg Gutfeld, a man renowned for being funnier in 5 unscripted seconds than Kimmel is in 5 written hours, absolutely flattened him. It wasn't even a high aim. You don't need a ladder to reach someone who's tripped over their own relevance. Watching Gutfeld dissect Kimmel felt like deflating an inflatable clown with a toothpick. Swift, effortless, and deeply satisfying. The numbers don't lie either. Just last week, Kimmel's average viewership was a paltry 1.5 million. In the coveted key demographic, it cratered to a mere 236,000. For context, Tucker Carlson's independently produced online videos, often filmed from what appears to be a cabin in Maine, regularly pull in 21 million views. 21 million. That's more than 10 times Kimmel's audience on a massive network freely available to millions. It truly makes one wonder about his self-perspective before he hurls insults from his ever-shrinking platform.
You know how much it costs to produce Jimmy Kimmel's show? I guarantee you it's tens and tens of millions. It could be as much as 100 million. I have no idea. You know how much Tucker's video cost? Nothing. You know how much Jimmy Kimmel, how many people he gets tuning in on an average night? Just last week, his average was, in the overall, meaning all viewers, 1.5 million. In the key demo, 236,000. Tucker would have been embarrassed to pull that on any night he was on the Fox News channel. That's what they're getting now. Tucker's numbers were 3 times what Jimmy Kimmel gets. And Tucker's little basement video that he did from clearly like his cabin that he broadcasts out of Maine in literally has 21 million views. Okay, 21 million views. Whereas, as I point out, on ABC, a massive network that comes into your home for free, that you have to make no effort to find, at best, Jimmy Kimmel can get 1.5 million. He needs to have a little self-perspective before going out there and hurling these insults because he looks a little silly.
Poor Jimmy. True, it was a terrible night for women, children, and for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who cut his lawn.
It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go, for healthcare, for our climate, for science, for journalism, for justice, for free speech. It was a terrible night for poor people, for the middle class, for seniors who rely on Social Security, for our allies in Ukraine, for NATO, for the truth and democracy and decency. And it was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him. And guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
This isn't growth, as his team might spin it. It's an unsettling erosion. Once upon a time, Jimmy Kimmel wore leather jackets, cracked irreverent beer jokes, and delighted in outrageous pranks. Now he wears moral superiority like a custom-tailored bathrobe, scolding anyone who dares to deviate from his particular brand of coastal sanctimony. He's no longer edgy or rebellious. He's become the substitute teacher who caught one student doodling a political figure and can't stop pontificating about teachable moments. Meanwhile, Greg Gutfeld offers a refreshing counterpoint. His comedy is a swift kick to hypocrisy, devoid of kid gloves or moral posturing. It's classic, biting satire that reminds you what late night once was, before it transformed into an audition reel for cable news guest spots. While Kimmel monologues in an empty echo chamber, filled only by the sound of his own perceived virtue, Gutfeld actually engages, actually jokes, and unforgivably to Jimmy, actually gets laughs. laughs. And speaking of laughs, Kimmel's audience sounds like they're clapping out of sheer obligation, as if someone just held up a cue card prompting them to pretend he's funny. He's delivering jokes to people who came for therapy, not comedy, and even the therapy is bad. Imagine being lectured on morality by a guy who famously interviewed bikini models while dressed in a gorilla suit. The sheer, baffling irony of it all is a comedy show in itself.
Last night was the 96th Academy Awards show, and while you might have missed it, there was one clear winner. No, not Oppenheimer. It was sanctimonious leftists for their lead role in pretending they are better than you. Several people shared in this achievement. Winner number one, Jimmy Kimmel. For the fourth time, Kimmel hosted the Oscars before an adoring crowd of Hollywood stars who laughed and curried favor with the man who wore blackface so many times he's second only to Justin Trudeau in his fondness for the practice. Yes, some of the very same celebrities who wanted you to believe they were horrified after yours truly said in 2018 that people used to don dark makeup in order to imitate well-known black celebrities and it wasn't a big deal. Absolutely ate up the performance by Hollywood darling Mr. Kimmel.
Carson cried like a baby over Ronald Reagan getting elected. Yeah, neither do I. And you know why he didn't? Because his wife didn't keep his balls in a Tupperware container next to a box of tofu burgers. But the killer phrase was at the end when Kimmel said, "You just don't realize it." Because you see, he's smarter than you, and he needs you to know that. And his ego can't bear that there's someone out there more famous and more influential than him. I got news for you, Kimmel. The last time you mattered, Bruce Jenner still had a penis. Love you, Bruce.
Kimmel's current act isn't dangerous. It's safe, polished, and corporately approved rebellion. It's like a punk band signing with a major studio and releasing a soft rock album about recycling. He believes he's punching up, but he's merely throwing predictable haymakers into a void, waiting for Twitter likes to validate his performative outrage. Megyn Kelly zeroed in on this with sniper-like clarity. Jimmy's entire shtick, she pointed out, is built on a lie. The pretense that he's somehow brave for mocking people he dislikes from a studio insulated by millions of dollars in media approval. That's not bravery, it's performance anxiety masked as activism. It's the result of confusing being loud with being genuinely effective. And the fake emotion. Dear God, the tears. Jimmy cries on air more frequently than a Netflix documentary about abandoned dogs. Every policy change, every tragedy, every headline, there he is, choking up, blinking hard, waiting for the applause to wash over his carefully choreographed vulnerability. His tear ducts, it seems, have their own PR agent. This was starkly evident at a recent Academy Award ceremony, where Kimmel hosted for the fourth time before an adoring crowd of Hollywood stars. These are the same celebrities who voiced horror when others acknowledged past instances of dark makeup used in entertainment, yet they absolutely ate up the performance by Mr. Kimmel, a man who has famously donned blackface multiple times, including an oft-repeated bit as basketball star Karl Malone and an appearance as Oprah in a fat suit. The hypocrisy is as thick as the irony.
Jimmy's career peaked with busty girls on trampolines. Now the only boob we see is him. He once co-hosted The Man Show. Now he's sobbing like he just watched Steel Magnolias 3 days into his menstrual cycle.
Whose blackface costumes included his oft-repeated bit as basketball star Karl Malone.
Now, Karl Malone never seen no flying saucer himself, but if he do, that's gonna be a spooky time.
And let's not forget Oprah in a fat suit.
15 minutes a day is all you need to get your heart rate up to where...
Please, Miss Oprah, you're crushing my... Sorry, Miss Oprah.
As his audience continues to shrink, it becomes clear that people simply don't want to be scolded by a millionaire with a self-proclaimed god complex and a comedic style seemingly stuck in reverse. His ratings are plummeting faster than his punchlines. Even his writers appear exhausted. The jokes land with the force of a balloon tap, and you can almost hear the sighs in the studio when another Republicans Are Bad bit rolls out, a preheated hot pocket of recycled material. There's no spice, no bite, just the same condescending chuckle as if he's explaining the intricacies of democracy to toddlers. Megyn Kelly isn't here for the performance. She's here for accountability. She said the quiet part out loud. Jimmy Kimmel isn't controversial. He's commercialized dissent. He's rebellion with a ratings clause. He's the kid who tattles on other kids at recess, then gives a unifying speech during the school assembly. The truly killer phrase in his post-election monologue was at the end when he declared, "You just don't realize it yet." Because you see, he believes he's smarter than you, and his ego cannot bear the thought that someone else might be more famous or influential. The truth, however, is far less flattering.
Just this past 2 weeks, they had the Kennedy Center honors the other night where Joe Biden couldn't say Dionne Warwick. He kept calling her Diane, and he didn't know who Barry Gibb was. He kept calling him Billy. You know who else was honored? At the Kennedy Center. You know who else? Billy Crystal. Just FYI, do you know who once opened up the Academy Awards in full blackface?
Oh,
Billy
yeah.
Crystal. Billy Crystal. And do you know who's going to be hosting the Academy Awards this year? Jimmy Kimmel. Do you know who's worn blackface repeatedly and spoken inner city sort of urban accent saying she needs to darn those socks? Jimmy Kimmel as Oprah, as a fat-suited, black-faced, darning socks Oprah. Now, if you are of the left, that's fine.
The very way he delivers his jokes has changed. He leans into the camera like he's about to reveal the ending to a gripping mystery, whispering punchlines as if they're state secrets, hoping that gravitas can somehow compensate for the glaring lack of humor. It doesn't. It merely leaves the audience feeling like they've accidentally tuned into a hostage video, and when he's not lecturing us, he's pandering relentlessly, desperately trying to prove how in touch he is with the common person, all while broadcasting from a studio that costs more per day than most Americans earn in a year. He wants to be relatable, but you can't genuinely connect with people when your idea of hardship is losing an Emmy to another late night host. Greg Gutfeld understands this game inside out. He doesn't pander, he provokes, and that in its purest form is what real comedy does. It challenges the audience, makes them think, and sometimes even makes them uncomfortable. Kimmel, on the other hand, wraps every joke in a safety blanket of "don't get mad at me, I'm one of the good ones." That's not comedy, that's corporate risk management in a blazer. So here we are watching Jimmy Kimmel slowly fade into the background, a once funny guy who now spends more time virtue signaling than actually telling jokes. He's not dangerous, he's not insightful, he's not even particularly entertaining anymore. He's just there, like a screensaver you forgot to turn off, smiling, blinking, and gently reminding you that he used to be cool. His career likely peaked with busty girls on trampolines during his man show days. Now, the only boob we see is him, sobbing like he just watched a heartbreaking melodrama 3 days into his menstrual cycle. Megyn Kelly and Greg Gutfeld didn't destroy Jimmy Kimmel. They didn't have to. He's been doing that himself, one agonizing, preachy monologue at a time. All they did was hold up a mirror, and the reflection wasn't pretty. It looked tired, predictable, and about 2 punchlines away from complete irrelevance. But hey, maybe there's still hope. Perhaps Jimmy can stage a comeback. Maybe he'll ditch the moralizing, discover a new angle, and finally rediscover what it truly means to be funny. Or maybe, just maybe, he'll simply cry about it instead. And if history is any indication, crying about it might just be the season finale of The Jimmy Kimmel Show, streaming now on every channel that confuses earnestness for entertainment. At this point, Kimmel isn't just phoning it in, he's texting it in from a wine bar in Malibu, sipping a Chardonnay labeled Tears of the Common Man. His idea of connecting with real people involves posting selfies with celebrities who've never been within 50 feet of a grocery store, while his punchlines are so stale they should come vacuum sealed. Yet he still struts across the stage like he just cured comedy and invented empathy. Spoiler alert, he did neither. He just slapped a sad face on sarcasm and called it political commentary. Megyn Kelly and Gutfeld didn't expose some secret scandal. They pointed out the painfully obvious truth. Kimmel has become the television equivalent of kale, allegedly good for you, but utterly miserable to consume. And like kale, he's praised by people who feel obligated to pretend they enjoy him, because admitting otherwise would make them seem uninformed. But here's the real kicker. Even the laughs he still manages to get are mostly from folks who aren't actually laughing. They're agreeing. And that, my friends, is not comedy. That's confirmation bias with a drum roll. The last time Kimmel made anyone genuinely laugh without immediately apologizing afterward was probably during a previous presidential administration. So while Gutfeld racks up ratings with actual jokes and Kelly fearlessly calls out the Emperor's new joke cards, Jimmy continues to host his nightly TED Talk with a side of forced chuckles. If that's the future of late night, we might as well tuck it in, kiss it on the forehead, and let it drift off into a soft, self-congratulatory coma. Nighty night, Jimmy. Try not to cry too loudly, some of us are still laughing, just not at your show. Because at the end of the day, comedy isn't about safe feelings or carefully curated outrage. It's about truth, challenge, and the guts to make people uncomfortable while making them laugh. Jimmy Kimmel forgot that somewhere between the celebrity interviews and the moral lectures, now he's stuck playing the same tired role, the self-appointed guardian of woke, wrapped in a velvet glove of humorless pity. Meanwhile, real voices, sharp, unapologetic, and honest, are carving out spaces where laughter actually means something. Here's to moving past the recycled punchlines and empty tears. The stage, it turns out, is far bigger than Jimmy's pity party.